Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I appreciate everybody joining today for what hopes to be a fantastic discussion with Chris on his career in data analytics and just data engineering in general. This is our first traditional user group meeting for DataFam Career Pathmakers. Appreciate, again, everybody joining. As everybody knows, over the course of the last year and a half, we've been doing bi-weekly sessions to kind of help everybody in your at whatever point you're in your job transition space with providing advice around interviewing, networking, resume writing, portfolio building, things like that to kind of helping your job search. So we thought it would be a good idea to start doing some quarterly traditional user group settings to bring in guests like Chris for those sessions to kind of talk about their career and the specific field, being in the data analytics field and kind of their area of expertise as well. So happy to have Chris here. And for anybody, as we go along, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A box, and we will go ahead and have some time left at the end, about 10 minutes at the end, where Chris can kind of answer some questions that you're putting through here. We will continue to have these sessions. We will have one in November, which I've got Annabelle Rincon lined up as the host in November to talk about her career and the data enablement space. So we'll get some information out that as we finalize some things. That'll be probably mid-November, but hope you guys are all able to attend that one to have a great conversation with Annabelle. So with that, I will kick it off to Chris to just do a little bit of an intro of himself. And then we'll dive into some questions. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Scott. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Chris Williams. I've been in the analytics scene for about 30 years. I'm a director of analytic consulting at Concentrix, and I've been doing Tableau probably for about 15 years. I'm a Tableau ambassador. I run a couple different user groups, run the Portland Tug, as well as the Black and Tableau Tug. It's just been a fun experience. A little bit about me, and that picture is funny because I took it while I was just trying on some sweatshirts down at Tableau conference this past year, and they got me in pigtails, and that's something only my nieces have ever been able to get me to do. So this is a rare picture indeed. I figured I'd share it and be fun with y'all. When I'm not a data geek, I do love to cook and I love to travel and hang out at the beach. So I am based out of Laguna Niguel, California, and it's an honor to be here today.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. And I apologize. I forgot to introduce myself for those of you who are joining for the first time. So my name is Scott Eaton, Data Visualization Manager at JP Morgan Chase. Have been here been at Chase for 12 years or so. I've been in the data visualization space for about 20 years, for 13 of those. I'm a Tableau user group ambassador. I'm one of the co-leads of the DataFam Pathmakers, along with Candace, who is also here on the call. I also co-lead the Columbus Tableau user group, the Central Ohio Tableau. I'm based out of Columbus, Ohio. And I also am a two-time Tableau conference speaker. I spoke at the conference this year as well as conference last year. I'm about all things documentation related and standards related. So those were kind of the crux of my talks last year. So feel free to kind of anytime you have any questions on that. So appreciate that. So I guess we'll go ahead and dive into some of the questions here. So I'm going to stop sharing and just put myself and Chris and Candace on the screen here. So Chris, I guess the first question I'd like to start out with you is just relation to your background here is, what motivated you to transition into the data and analytics field?
Well, it was interesting because, if you looked at my About Me profile, I was a Russian major and a psych minor. And you're probably wondering, how the hell did I end up in analytics? So computers were always something that I was interested in. I went to computer camp as a youngster. My dad was very much into computers. I actually worked with him, and he and I developed games. And I'm dating myself right now. Basic. We did basic at command line and created games. And then ultimately, when he started, he had his own CD-ROM company on Space, and we actually developed games in Visual Basic down the road too. So that's where my passion for computers really started. As I graduated, I was first doing Y2K work for a company called Circuit City. And Circuit City was back in the 90s, was a very big,
I remember
call, yeah, Circuit City is like the Best Buy of the 90s, I would say. The only remnant of Circuit City right now is actually, ironically, CarMax. And that was actually the last project I worked on for that Circuit City as a brand. CarMax was completely off the beaten path of what Circuit City was known for, but yet it still stands today as the last part of Circuit City. So I was doing Y2K work to make sure that no one freaked out when we went from 2-digit years to 4-digit years. And then it was then when I got discovered by a company called SAIC, and I was able to do more traditional programming and analytics and doing a lot of simulations. I worked on a helicopter simulation, getting data from helicopters for exercises within the Air Force and the Navy as well. So that's really how that started. It was nice to understand that the work that I had been able to put in as with my parents and with my dad, and also some computer work that I did at UVA, University of Virginia, helped prepare me for this transition to the analytics field. So it's a slow progression, but it was great. And that's really how I got started. And ever since then, I guess the proverbial, it's all she wrote from there. But understanding what happened with why we were gathering the data from helicopters and other, flying equipment, I would say, to solve a problem was pretty interesting to me.
Awesome. I know we talked a little bit on the side about that first project you worked on with, I guess it was Circuit City, or I guess what's soon to become known as the Department of Homeland Security. Can you talk a little bit about that project? I thought it was a very interesting story. I think everybody would love to hear it.
Sure. So from the matriculation from Circuit City to helicopter simulators, I was fortunate enough to be able to help develop and lead all the reporting for what we would call the National Counterterrorism Center at what is now called the Department of Homeland Security. We worked on a program called Worldwide Incident Tracking System, and that tracked every terrorist incident that occurred for our dead, wounded, hostage, and total victims for every terrorist event that took place in the world. So I started off doing, I'm really dating myself now, Cognos, IBM Cognos, for Everett County Public Schools. It was a very peaceful life, and that changed quite a bit. So I was living in Everett, Washington, basically doing analytics for K through 12 classes and students and such, going from that to basically the frying pan into understanding, text analytics, understanding terrorist groups and the various spellings. So trying to understand how to interpret that to make one single truth out of a terrorist group and what they were doing. All this work and all of the analysis that took place, being able to having a hand in the terrorist database that we built, being able to do classified and unclassified work as far as reporting for helping us, on the war on terror. That's really what drove the thirst for me to stay in the field of analytics, and really just said, I knew this was for me when we were formulating our reports that we were developing and originating, were formulating public policy and protecting Americans. And it was really in protecting the world, really. I mean, it was really rewarding, and it forced me to have a level of detail that to this day helps me do my job to the best of my ability. So it's really rewarding to understand how I could solve problems. And this is what analytics is. It's solving problems. It's literally mini puzzles that will all come to a big puzzle, which would be what we would call a use case or an analytic question.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's that's great. It's and things have happened like that in my career too. There was just being in the field for so long to see how you still use stuff and from when you first started, how they still apply into, even though how much the world has changed from a technology standpoint, AI standpoint, things like that, how still some of those still core skills you learned back then are still applicable to today.
Absolutely. It's and I'm a former cognoid. I'm proud to admit I still use Cognos to this day. The the discipline that is needed to understand how to build a valid report or how to build a metadata layer to get a report, and make that so that it's something that it's usable across ultimately decades. I mean, the database that we helped build for the National Counterterrorism Center / Hope Department of Homeland Security, they still use it. And I'm sure they're still using the reports, at least some of the reports that I developed at that point in time as well. I mean, the idea is whenever we develop anything, whether it be for the government or any of your stakeholders, is that the point of adoption is really critical. It's critical for job security. So at any level, whether you're reporting off of inventory or government or whatever your vertical may be, everything revolves around making sure you listen to your stakeholders and what they're asking for, derive and develop the requirements for whatever it is that you're building, whether it be a dashboard or a story or a series of dashboards that solve an analytic problem. And then being able to deliver in a way that multitude of personas can understand what it is that they need to do to get through their day and either help the government or help a persona get through their day and understand how well they're doing in their organization or the company. Being able to develop something that helps a company get better than they were today. That's what we all strive for as developers, architects, however you want to look at it, because we want people to use what we build. And that's really what brings everything home.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. On one of my previous roles, we were working on a analytics project. I don't know if everybody's familiar with like Net Promoter Score, things like that in the industry. And I worked as part of wealth in my previous role with Chase, and we had an initiative we wanted to bring our Net Promoter Score up to a 70. So we did a bunch of analysis, and that analysis played out to where it started. Based on that analysis, they implemented a pilot to start giving financial advisors more kind of, I guess it's what you would call intern help, or just kind of assistance to kind of help them with things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So they did that for a period of months. And what I had found out is at the end of the year, and I didn't find this out until I had my performance review at the end of the year, because I wasn't directly involved in the analysis. It was somebody that I managed that did the analysis and used Tableau to do this analysis, built these ad hoc charts, put them in, and put those charts in like PowerPoint slides to present to the stakeholders and things. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'd found out at the end of the year is, and this goes to Chris, to your point of like how the analysis we do, how that can contribute to like bottom lines or return on investments, things like that. What he found out that implementing that pilot ended up raising our Net Promoter Score over that time period. So it's just seeing like the quantifiable results of some of the analyses that at the end of the day, it can be very rewarding and kind of makes you feel like, yeah, I'm in the right place. I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. Things like that. Because I live by the motto, if you love your job, you don't work a day in your life. And there's been times in the job that I do right now, it's like, I can't believe they pay me to do this. I would do. But it's just that sense of satisfaction that you get when you spent time doing an analysis, you presented it to stakeholders, and you've just gone through that whole life cycle, what I call the standard development life cycle of a data visualization project.
Mhm.
So everything from requirements gathering to designing to building to testing and finally to even doing follow-ups afterwards to see how are things being implemented and stuff like that. You do get invested in the work you do, and to me it gives you a sense of satisfaction that I don't think I've gotten anywhere else.
No, sure, absolutely. I know one of the things you had mentioned is how did my background, my educational background, and help me prepare for the transition, or
Yes.
what kind of skills do I have that I use in my current role? So, when in my About Me slide, I was a Russian major and a psych minor. And one of the things that made that easy for me to go into computers is because I was really good with languages, whether it be spoken languages or computer languages. Usually I used to work overseas and I was a Windows admin in 6 different languages. So that helped me with my discipline quite a bit to understand computer languages, because it's the same sort of building blocks of being able to articulate what you want. So I brought that foundation into anything I did with IT, whether it be through Windows admin or being an Oracle DBA with discipline in those languages. And I still do that, use that same methodology to learn a new language. Like say if I were learning Python, I would use that same sort of idea. When I started off in my career, I did a lot of linear languages like COBOL, RBG, C, BASIC.
Yep.
As you matriculate through, I went from a more linear programming to an object-oriented programming, where I got into the C++, I got into Java, I got into more understanding how to develop proper functions so those could be reused. Even though Tableau is more of a visual aspect of things, the reusability is still very much in play. You create templates to make your job easier. You have AI that can actually help develop something for you to get you started. And it's not something that I would feel in a situation you're not going to be replaced by anything. The goal is that we live in an impatient society where people are asking you to do things that are due yesterday. And they're giving you all sorts of pressure to say, hey, we need this, when are you going to have this done? All of this preparation that you're doing and all the skills that you have in building a report or a dashboard, the repetition will give you the confidence to increase that speed. So when you get a requirement, it's a matter of being able to interpret things. So in my current role, I take a look at a use case, maybe by vertical or something, and I look at it and I say, okay, what have I done in my past that resembles this? And then I, bring that knowledge back. And if you've not done something in the past, then rely on something that you have done as far as the methodology of whether it be understanding the data that you're working with, the type of data that you're working with, and then the discipline in answering a question. All these things are puzzles. You're just putting together a puzzle. And then when you first get started, the goal here is to try to find out, okay, what they're asking me is helping our business or our organization do something faster. So it's really, really important to understand, if you've done it before, how long it's taken for you to do it manually, or how long, and the reason why I set that foundation or set that expectation is because you want to track how what you're building is going to shorten that process and increase adaptability. So you'll hear the terms ROI, return on investment. You'll hear a whole bunch of alphabet soup when it comes to something like that. ROI is really important because you want to make sure that you eliminate some of the person hours so that you can actually do more analyzing at the secondary and tertiary level to really get into the nitty-gritty details on why something may be happening. So if you're improving a process, to track what's happened at the beginning or up to this point, to when you finish, because that separation in time, that duration can be used as one step as far as your ROI is concerned. And then obviously that could lead into the person hours and how much those person hours mean to the company and so forth. So that's sort of what I tend to do. And then sometimes I'll look at a higher level and being able to develop the requirements, but I also have done all the digging and deep in the weeds. I've done a lot of that in my career. So it's easier for me to help scope things because I've been in those battles trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how am I technically going to be able to do this?
Yeah. I definitely hear you on that. I can do some of that as well. Just to kind of use the example, when I'm estimating projects, um, I've gotten into at least me personally, I've gotten to a good pattern that I like to do as far as kind of based on past projects, like buffering in an extra 2 weeks into any estimate to allow for any technical hiccups or any things that you may not anticipate to show up. But based on all the past projects I've worked on, too, if I get a new project that comes in, I've been, at least for me personally, I've been very accurate at being able to estimate the amount of time that project is to get done based on a similar project or project I've done in the past. So just that's just all the knowledge, the knowledge and things that you get as you're going through and starting out. These are all lessons that you'll learn or that anybody will learn, and we learned it as well starting out. And you know those lessons just by actually being hands in, hands down in the weeds, working on these projects and kind of developing those skills and those learnings with that. And to your kind of return on investment piece, that kind of really hits home to me because I'm part of the reporting and automation team in credit card data analytics here at Chase. And that is a big thing for us is we have reports and things like that are very manual in creation, or what we call partially automated, to where you're maybe running some stuff in SAS and then taking that output and having to put it into like a final Excel output. So we're going through various projects to what I call automate a lot of those to where our tool of choice is Alteryx. We want Alteryx to do all of the data ingestion, data processing, and output creation.
Mm-hmm.
And an example I can give to where there was a huge, because you were talking earlier about just kind of man hours it takes and reducing those man hours. Either from either creating a report manually or just running of a workflow to kind of produce an output. I go back to when I was part of wealth management as well. One of the first projects that I worked on in wealth management was we had a Tableau dashboard. We call it was our feedback insights dashboard, and this just gave us it was basically a taxonomy to where we got feedback comments from different parts, different areas, and we'd feed the data through a taxonomy to do categorizations and things like that. But there was a huge workflow that had to be run in the background to kind of generate the hyperfile that we use for the Tableau dashboard. Mm-hmm. And that initial, I think it was a combination of, I think maybe 2 or 3 workflows. And initially when I came in, those workflows took a combined 24 and a half hours to run to generate all that. So I spent quite a bit of time analyzing the workflow, figuring out how to reduce things. And sometimes reducing time of running of things is very simple. Like in Alteryx for one of the workflows, I eliminated the person had left browse tools in there. And just eliminating the browse tools took 2 hours off the runtime. Things like that. So by the time, story short, by the time everything was said and done, where I did my analysis, reworded some things, optimized some workflows, maybe added a few extra to kind of separate out some things. I took a 24 and a half hour runtime down to, I think, 4.5 hours combined.
Yeah.
So and that was not so much a people savings, but just a time savings in getting the dashboard updated or proposed, so that people, maybe your stakeholders, won't see, but it's optimization going on behind the scenes that will that can then free up your time to kind of work on other things to, like maybe there's optimizations need to be done on the user interface side of a dashboard or something like that. But it's just that's where things come into play. So I guess that with that, that's a good transition, because I had to use a lot of my data engineering skills as I was going through that analysis to kind of figure out where to optimize some things there. So I think it's a great transition to kind of dive into some kind of data engineering pieces where I know I would call you an expert on the data engineering side based on stuff, a lot of things that you've done in the space. So I would say the first question I would ask in relation to the data engineering side is, how does data engineering contribute to the effectiveness of data visualization?
So it's interesting that you bring up Alteryx. I've used Alteryx for about a decade myself. I'm an Alteryx ace, and I run the Alteryx user group down here in Orange County, along with my tech team partner, Deb Diesel. So I've been using Alteryx quite a bit. You talk about ROI and saving time. Alteryx is a time saver. And when you're talking about data engineering, a visualization is only as important as how clean the data is that you're working with. So the data prep and the data organization is critical in order for that to happen. So whatever tool you decide to use, whether it be Tableau Prep, whether it be Alteryx or whatever, the main goal after you go through and ingest your data is to assess how clean it is, make sure that you have a clear understanding of what your key performance indicators you want to get from that particular data source, and make sure that those KPIs are report ready, meaning that you can go ahead and throw it into a hyperfile if you're throwing it into Tableau or whatever your visualization tool of choice is, so that when you get into that application, you're able to go ahead and pivot against that and put your dimensions and your measures together to answer these questions. And a lot of these questions, if you're going to be answering from a visualization standpoint, it's going to be through certain times. So like maybe the last 5 weeks, or week over week comparison, or year over year comparison, depending on the question and the context in which you're looking for. A lot of your key performance indicators that you're looking from the data sources that you're compiling into one spot, it's going to require a lot of cleansing in some cases. Unless you're dealing with a training data set, data is dirty. And so you're not going to get super clean data right out the chute. So it's one of the most important steps, if not the most important step, before you get into any calculations or any sort of KPI definitions, is that the data that you're working with is clean and reliable. So that's the part where data engineering is critical. It's a step that has to happen. And it's almost cyclical, because every time you add another data source to the mix, you're going to have to make sure that that particular source is valid and ready to go as well. So I would say that, obviously your data will dictate what kind of visualization you should use. Tableau is really great about that with the show me your data type of thing. It will give you some ideas on what type of visualizations you can use based off of the dimensions that you have. That's great. Sometimes a line chart is great. Sometimes a bar chart is better, or a combination chart. Visual conditional formatting. So if you have something in red font or green font, that comes into play as well. But none of that happens unless your data is ready to go, and that's a whole part of the data cleansing in the metadata layer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I always tell people, and I've never had this happen in my career, but I always tell people, dashboards work best if you have the data shaped the way you need it to, and you can just sit a Tableau dashboard on top of it to just pull the data, and you don't need to create any calculation or anything like that. But we all know that's kind of pie in the sky, and that's not how the real world works. There's always some shaping you have to do. There's always going to be some sort of calculations you can do. But yeah, you need to try to, at least in my experience, have to make sure, especially with the heavy processing of calculation things, most of that should be done on the back end, whether it's in Alteryx, whether it's on the database side. All that, you need to use what those tools are meant to do, which is do the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
is I've seen it a lot of times where people try to do a lot of those calculations in the Tableau side itself, and that can then leads to performance issues, slowness issues, things like that. So that's where having that data engineering skill set, and even if you're not kind of fully versed in it, just knowing the fundamentals will kind of help you lead those discussions that up. And that actually kind of leads me into my next question here. We know in this space that sometimes you can be both a data engineer and a data visualizer. And it's for most companies, it's ideal if you're both. If it's ideal if you're both, because I've told many people during our biweekly sessions that it's good to know those skills, because if you can do both, companies are more prone to hire one person and pay one salary than they would have to pay two salaries. But that's not always the case. And I've been in roles to where I've been just the front end person, and I've had to work with a data engineer to kind of get the data shaped the way I need it. So I guess what that kind of leads to my question here is, how important is collaboration between data engineers and data visualization specialists?
Oh, that part is absolutely essential. Communication along this entire process between every part of your ingestion, your engineering, and your visualization. That's critical. You have to have seamless communication. Otherwise, you get disjointed effort, and you may have an overlap of efforts, and you just ultimately have complete inefficiency on the process, which will result in more time being spent to do something than probably it should. So you're basically allowing the clock to run a little bit more if you don't have that collaboration from the start. And that would generally mean a loss of money on the project. It's because you'd be spending more time to do things than maybe it takes 2 weeks longer to do things if you because you didn't collaborate. Those are the kinds of things that you may be successful, but if your cost exceeds what you estimated, then people are going to look at that as a potential negative, and you don't want that. So, when you're dealing with, the whole engineering practices and the speed and understanding where your strengths are, generally what I do with visualization tools is that I will calculate whatever I can in Alteryx as far as depth calculations, unless they're runtime calculations. Then at that point, you have to rely on, whether it be Tableau, whether you're cloud or server, to handle the optimization of that if it's a live connection. The good thing about Hyper files is that it'll calculate all that for you, so your user experience is actually pretty good. But I try to set the table for any visualization tool, whether it be Tableau Prep, or Alteryx, to try to do all the intricate calculations there in the metadata layer first, so that the only thing I rely on Tableau to do is anything runtime, running counts, week over week. Those things that require to be calculated on pretty much on the spot. So I try to do that, but it's all really, that process starts off with the requirements, understanding who the players of the game are in the room, getting them understood with one another, what each role is. It sounds very elementary, but I see it not happening as often as it should, and that results in time loss. I'm going to say this, as far as your career goes, if you understand data and how to read data and how to associate data and clean data, you'll be in position for any job. And the reason why is because if you know the data, you can interpret what kind of questions to ask of that data. And you can take that wash, rinse, and repeat that formula to any data set. I don't know anything about golf, but if I got a golf data set and I know how to organize the data with structures and how I need to clean it and what kind of things I need to do, that's what you lean on. Because you're going to be given in some data in your careers that you're not going to know anything about. But what I would encourage you to do is not be intimidated by the fact that I don't know this type of data. what I would say is that, okay, I don't know this data. Let's see what I have in my columns. Let's see what I can do to try to figure out what would make sense. And especially if they've already given you some, you can already look into, okay, so they gave me these KPIs. Let me figure out what else can be answered based off of this data. And then you can go run from there. If you always know the data, you're never going to be lost, because you can, if it may not be this job, it'll be something else where you can take your data knowledge and how you organize that, take it somewhere else. And if you're just starting in this industry, or if you're just starting in analytics, whether it be a college student or just transitioning, that what I would do to hone those skills is get free data sets and play around in Tableau Public and play around with the data. That discipline of understanding how to read a data set and turn that into a dashboard or a report, and you can do that for free. That's Tableau Public is free. It's a way you could go ahead and do that. And that just shows me, and there are times in which I'm going to be faced to hire and build a team. What that shows me is that this person knows how to organize, build requirements, organize data, and then tell a story visually with the data that they modeled. And that's a complete life cycle of a Tableau or a dashboarding or anything. This is any type of visualization project whatsoever. That's gold.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely echo everything you said there, and it kind of does a good transition because I think you covered a little bit of this. Love the advice that you just gave about somebody trying to get into the data visualization space. So in that same manner, are there any common misconceptions about that you think are important to address?
Yeah, I think that this field is for everybody. It's not exclusionary. It's not sectionalized. If you have a desire to solve a problem, you can be very successful in the analytics field. You don't have to have, I mean, if a Russian major and a psych minor isn't enough to tell you that you don't have to be an IT specialist to be a success in this field, I don't know what is. But I mean, I don't want anybody intimidated, wondering how can I compete? It's like, no, you do your own way, play with the data. Data's not going to talk back to you. The answers are generally right in front of you when you're playing with the data set. Get yourself comfortable with this. If you've been in another field and you're transitioning into analytics field, you can do this. I think the greatest misconception is that you have to be some sort of data scientist to be successful in this field. I think by the time you get in this field and play around with it, you don't have to be a data scientist, but you're going to end up being one, and a damn good one. And so it's just a matter of the foundation of analytics is trying to solve a puzzle and understanding what that puzzle is and how you're going to solve that puzzle is what differentiates everybody here. Anybody on this call or anybody who's listening to this webinar or watching us right now, you're all my contemporaries. You're all people who I want to learn from. Even though I've been in the analytics field for 30 years, that doesn't mean I can't learn. I learn every day. That's what makes me better. I want to learn from everybody. I want people who are just coming into the field to be better than me. I want them to go and make their own mark and do something that they, maybe I've never done. And I'm here for all of that. I want to understand how people look at things, because the visualization aspect is the artistic part. How are you going to tell the story? Because how I tell a story with my visualizations may not be how you tell your story, Scott, through visualizations, or anybody else on here. That's what makes it so cool, because there's so many different ways to understand how people see this data. And those different views, that's where you actually make headway and solve stuff.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I've seen it many times where people coming from non-traditional fields, I've talked with people who were history majors, art majors, psych majors that are wanting to get into this space, and have succeeded in this space. So I
Mhm.
definitely agree with you on that standpoint that it's for everybody. I came from more traditional background myself. My degree is in computer information systems, so I went to school to do web application development. So I learned like C Sharp, .NET, like that, and then I did that for the first year I was out of school. And I'm going to date myself here now. I was back in around 2006 is when I got introduced to the field of data visualization, which was very much in its toddler stage at that time. We don't have all the tools and we didn't have all the tools and resources back then that everybody has now, because it was back then it was known as executive dashboarding. That people that executives were just starting to get familiar with and get out there, and people like Stephen Few and Tufty were starting to write books and just talk about some of that stuff. Um, but like I said, I've been able to take those skills, apply them to everything that's going on today. So you can your where you've been in the field for a long time, or you're coming from, let's say, sales, and you want to do this. I definitely wholeheartedly agree with Chris that that transition can be done, because there's still, yes, there are what um, I would call hard skills. Like, yeah, you may not have any exposure to Tableau or to Alteryx. So from the technical side of things, there will be some ramp up and a learning curve that you would have to do to kind of get familiar with the tool set used in the space. But there's a lot of very what I call transferable skills that no matter what industry you're from can apply, whether that's communication skills, work skills, leadership skills, things like that. All those are transferable. And you can continue to build on those uh, in this space.
Mhm.
So I guess
There's
because I want to make sure time for questions here. Oh, I'm sorry. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
there's one thing I'd like to add, if you don't mind, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're coming out of a new field where you've not done analytics before, please don't have amnesia on where you came from. And what I mean by that is that you probably have dealt with those type of data and use cases. Bring everything you've learned from your other jobs with you, because that'll help you apply analytics to your vocation or that vertical that you came from first. And that'll help make you connect the dots a little bit better for how analytics, like if you're an accountant and you want to switch into analytics, and I would say, okay, what are some of the things that I did as an accountant that might be that I can relate to an analytical use case? It's because you have the comfort of understanding what you've been doing. And then you have the new stuff that you're trying to integrate it. Ideally, what we try to do is try to make connections. We try to make find the common denominators, and that's how you start getting a foundation in the comfort zone of what analytics means to you professionally.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I would say this as well. I think our field is more competitive than it's ever been right now. So it is a highly evolving field with a lot of new trends coming through. And you also have, we're also dealing with like post-COVID times, and universities now actually have data visualization programs, business intelligence programs. Reason that wasn't around back when myself and Chris first started. You had to get like computer science degrees or things like that. So competitive field, which just for me shows the resiliency of the field and just the importance of the field itself, because everybody needs analytics somewhere, and it's very valuable to have individuals who are skilled in those areas and can develop well in those. So don't be, for those of you who are in job transition, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Um, and hopefully some of the skills that for some of you who either have attended our biweekly sessions or will in the future, uh, every piece of advice we put out there, we're doing it from a place of love and support, because we've been through some of those same challenges, and me especially. That's why I do what I do. Um, because I've run into many hurdles in my career to where it's taken me quite a bit of time to get through those because I did not have a mentor that I could reach out to kind of guide me in that process. So if through the learnings that I can give to everybody to help individuals get to points in their career faster than it took me, that to me at the end of the day is why I do what I do. I want to help people progress, help them learn, help them get better at their job, and that is kind of my legacy that I'm leaving behind. And sounds, Chris, very similar to what you're trying to do as well. So we all have some kind of legacy we want to leave behind to make it better for the next generation that's coming after us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I do want to leave some time for questions at the end here. So for those of you who do have questions, feel free to add them into the Q&A. So I will close it out, Chris, with this question to you. And I know this is kind of a standard question for everybody, no matter what field you're in. But how do you see the field of data analytics evolving in the next few years?
Well, see, here's the thing about analytics, and this is why it's a competitive field, and this is why everybody's coming into it. As long as people are breathing, there's always going to be data. So it's not like there's going to be a shortage of data. So this is one of the cool industries where you're getting data coming out of you everywhere. I mean, you have sports data, you have healthcare data, you have real estate data. I mean, you have data for data. It's kind of crazy. But the cool part of this is that you can take your analytics show pretty much to any vertical that you want. And so it's important to understand that, we do a lot of sports. Like I've done sports analytics, I've done casino analytics. And as long as they're casinos, there are always going to be analytics on them. So, I mean, you can find your job, you can find your passion. It's a matter of really you're going to have to get out there and you're not alone. As long as I'm breathing, I'll be more than happy to, help anybody here find their way because I want you to be a contemporary of mine. I mean, this is a great field to be in. And Scott said this at the very beginning, that this is, if you like solving puzzles and you like doing your work, it doesn't seem like it's work. You're just solving a puzzle. You're literally sitting at your dining room table, putting 1,000-piece puzzle together. So you can, don't even stress so much about the lack of experience. Create your portfolio with some of the newer data. And that alone is really dang impressive because then you're saying, I don't have to really train this person. There's a great analytical mind already. They've done this. And if you articulate it well, then that's even better. I mean, that's great along with, having a portfolio like that's super. So, don't be afraid of what you don't know. There's a lot I don't know, and I readily admit that. I'm just very grateful for being able to understand and have confidence in the things that I do know, and that comes through repetition. That comes through, putting myself in uncomfortable positions so that I can become comfortable. So don't be afraid of what you don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely concur with that statement as well. So, all right, well, that concludes the panel discussion here. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, but I did see one that came through the chat. So the question that came through the chat, and let me find it here, is how do we best bridge the gap when we don't have direct domain experience, but bring strong transferable skills from other industries?
It's just you get yourself familiarized with free data of other industries. I mean, I find myself doing that at times to create POCs or proof of concepts dashboards, because if you just throw yourself in the middle of a data set on a topic you might not know, you're going to learn something by the end of that. And so I would do something similar to that. That the only thing that costs is time for you to investigate. There's always a common denominator to help you bridge a gap. It's just a matter of being able to find the right one that's going to resonate and kickstart that process for you. So I would encourage patience, but I would also encourage you to find things that, pieces of data that you may not know, and go forth and do things that way. And that should help at least get the bridge built, at least the start of the bridge built. I mean, you can determine which direction you want to go as you get more intelligent on how you feel with what you're finding.
Okay. Next question actually that came through is, how do you see the role of data engineers, analysts evolving with the rise of AI and machine learning?
I always have said that AI is not going to replace you. Someone who knows how to use AI better than you do will replace you. So AI is not going to replace anything that you do. I'm a firm believer of that. However, AI can be used to cut time off of things that are laborious and so much of a time suck, so to speak. I do feel like you're going to have to, like with Tableau, I mean, you can build simple visualizations. How I can build level of detail calculations, which I can explain, but sometimes it makes me want to pull my eyelashes out, because it could be it's all about context. AI can help cut time, and sometimes hours turn into days. And when you're trying to solve a problem quickly, AI can give you a bit of a head start, because sometimes it's a race against the clock to try to finish something faster. So don't be afraid of AI and what it can do for you. I don't think it's an easy button all the time, but I think it can help with your trying to figure out what it is that you need to do. Maybe you use AI to run some ideas by you, but it can also help with some simple, prep or simple dashboard or report to get started. Then you add all the intricacies later, because you basically created a template using AI or some sort. So AI can be very helpful. It can also allow you to talk to your data to maybe get somewhere a little bit faster than you would if you were just going line by line on something. So I think it'll be a pretty big help. I think it can be. I think it'll help with speed.
Yeah, I think it will as well, just from my perspective. I always say AI is only as intelligent as the human that's programming it, and because there's behind any good AI, there's a human that's programming it and feeding it in information to make it get better.
Mhm.
So unless we ended up getting when I first heard about AI, I was always thinking worst case scenario, thinking Terminator, AI is going to take over the world, things like that. But I've kind of, the more I've gotten to learn about AI, and I would strongly recommend for anybody, really the basics and the foundations of AI. That will give you a good understanding of how it can help you in your everyday roles. And a bit as well, we have an internal chat GPT here where I'm not very good at drafting like PowerPoints for presentations. So I use it to kind of give me a starting template for a PowerPoint presentation I may need to put together, and then I tweak it as needed. I've never put our LLM and never used it verbatim word for word. There's always still some amount of human intervention that's going to be needed to kind of put that personal touch on it, and you want to have that personal touch with things. But it's helped me create my PowerPoints quicker. It's helped me even draft emails better, because I'm not a wordsmith by any means. So when I need to have stuff that's really professional sounding, I will draft an initial message and feed it in and say, "Hey, make this more professional sounding." And it normally comes out with it based on. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that does this, but based on what it's put in, it comes out with some pretty good um, verbiage back that I maybe have to tweak minorly. But it's things like that that saves you time, because before that, I'd be said maybe it'd take me a week to create a PowerPoint, or I maybe spend 2 hours trying to draft an email, to where now it takes it down to like minutes with being able to do some of that. And I see the same thing happening in the data visualization space, um, especially with some of the new features that are part of Tableau Next, which kind of out of the scope of this call. We don't want to go into any of that there, but there's a lot of, I think, things that'll be coming with that. I'm very much a favor of, and I haven't had a chance to work with this, but I've had some preliminary exposure to Tableau Pulse as part of Tableau Cloud, and being able to use that. I kind of think of that as a way. Before, manually, we would be creating like manual KPI, like sheets to create KPI boxes to put them into your dashboards and things like that. Replacing the need to do that. So there's a time savings there. You can just create a pulse metric and put that in your dashboard instead of having to manually create KPI numbers and things like that. So it's kind of efficiencies like that, where the pulse is just very basic. There's two parts you have to pulse. One is very basic that comes out of the box with Tableau Cloud, but then you have the more generative AI piece that there's a cost behind that. But there's multiple pieces of any AI you want to use. So that kind of goes to Chris's point, to where I see Tableau Pulse optimizing the work I would do with building a dashboard, because I now don't have to spend this time. Let's say I've got 5 KPIs to create. It may take me a day or two to create all 5 of those, get them in a dashboard, get them hooked up with actions and things like that, just to make sure that they're working. It's like supposed to in the dashboard, where, okay, you go build it through Pulse. Maybe it'll take 5 minutes, and then you can just embed it in the dashboard right there, or link to the dashboard right there. So taking a day and a half worth of work down to maybe 30 minutes. So that's kind of AI. And just as far as like the generative piece of it, again, it's only as smart as the human that's feeding data into it. So I do think it will improve our lives. And it will just continue to grow as we learn more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, guys, I know we are at time. Let me just do a final check, see if there's any more questions that have come in. All right, I don't see any more questions. So appreciate everybody for showing up today for our first traditional user group meeting. Again, thank you, Chris, for sharing with us your journey and your expertise in the data engineering space. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And be on the lookout, everybody. Once we finalize the date in November to have Annabelle on, we will definitely put out a post about that, and she'll be doing the same thing. She'll be talking about her career journey and actually talk about how data enablement, the importance of data enablement in our space as well. So thank you.
That was amazing.
Yes, she is, and I'm very looking forward to that discussion as well. So, all right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and talk to you soon. Bye.